3 days into writing my book, and I'm already experiencing why I quit before. I've started writing a book 3 times, 3 different books I've started, and I've quit all of them probably within a week or two, I'd say. Or they certainly started tapering out, and at the end of 4 or 6 weeks, I'd certainly quit by then. And what I'm experiencing is I'm 3 days in, so I've spent average of 30 minutes a day, so I'm an hour and a half in. It's messy. Creating something is messy. And before, when I was writing, I wasn't okay with messy. I wasn't okay trying to wade through all the thoughts that are in my head, trying to communicate them, trying to figure out what kind of order to put them in, how to create a storyboard of them so it makes sense to the reader. This was all just too messy for me, and I wasn't okay with the messy. The messy felt imperfect. The messy felt like I didn't know how to do it. The messy felt too hard to keep going. And so I quit. And I'm not being hard on myself. I'm not judging myself here that I quit. The fact of the matter is I quit. And it's probably been 9 months since I quit writing my last book. And what I'm noticing is, one, I've made a commitment that for 90 days I'm writing 30 minutes a day. And I'm going to have a book published in my hand I can hold at the end of 90 days. I've made a commitment. I've made it public, and there's people that I'm being accountable with, which is making a big difference in my commitment level to do it. But I'm reflecting on how messy the action is, how messy it is to do it. And I'm realizing that before I was living a very destination-centric way, I was living a very destination-centric way of living. That if I didn't know how to get to the end, if I didn't know how to get to to write the end of the book, it felt too hard, it felt too messy, it felt like the effort was not worth it. And so frankly, I quit. And what I see now is I have the vision. I have the goal. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to publish a book. But what I recognize right now is I don't need to know exactly what that looks like. I don't need to know exactly what each page is going to look like. I don't even need to know exactly what each chapter or which subheading looks like. I don't need to know who's going to do my graphic design work. I don't need to know any of that right now. As I go through the process, so instead of a destination-centric way of living, I'm radically focused on a journey-centric way of living. Learning to love the process. Learning to love the messiness. Is the messiness hard? Yeah, it's what I'm experiencing is, in my head, I had this really zoomed out vision of what the book could be about. And it sounded awesome in my head. In the echo chamber in my head, it sounded awesome. And as soon as I started putting it in outline form, it started getting really messy. And I realized that my thoughts weren't as clear as I thought they were. And so I had to do some work on clarifying the thoughts and getting and moving some things around and trying to make sure I'm capturing all these different ideas that I've had floating around my head. And this feels super messy. Like I feel like I'm wading into like a swamp trying to do this, and it's messy. I wasn't okay with messy before. I wasn't okay with loving the journey before, and so I quit. It wasn't worth it to me. It didn't fit the way I wanted to live my life before. I just wanted to know how to get to the end of something, and if I didn't know how to get to the end of something, it was really hard for me to stick with it. Now, I recognize I never know how to get to the end of something. And if I do know how to get to the end of something, it's probably not worth pursuing because I'm selling myself short if I already know how to get to the end of what I want to do. My mission is to elevate others to live in a way that they hear, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant," when they get to heaven. And frankly, when I step into being faithful with my gifts, when I live on the edge of authenticity, creativity, and vulnerability, I don't know what that looks like day after day. I don't. It's new. Vulnerability tomorrow is new. Living on the edge of creativity in 6 months, I don't know what that's going to look like. But I'm committed to the process of loving the process. I'm committed to doing the messy thing, doing it over and over and over and over and over, and loving the messiness of it. Because what I'm realizing is if it's not messy, it's not worth creating. Because what makes it messy is that I'm on the edge of doing something I haven't done before. And if I know how to do it, that means I've already done it before. And to me, being faithful with what I have is not just doing what I've done before. Being faithful with what I've been given is learning to expand my horizons, learning to expand my capacity, learning to expand, learning to experiment, learning to partner together in ways I haven't partnered before. So what I'm realizing and recognizing in when I write this book for the next 87 days of the 90 days is that it's going to be messy. It's going to be messy the whole way through. Sure, there are days of writing, of editing that are going to feel better than others. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the whole thing's going to be messy. And I love that. Great. Good. Hey, Pastor Sweat. I'm glad to see you on here. And by the way, I ordered your Amazon book, by the way. I have not read it yet, but I am looking forward to reading it. And maybe I'll even reach out at some point and get your advice on publishing a book, because that's what we're talking about here. And so the messiness is what makes it worth it. And the more messy it feels, I think the more authentic it feels. Because sometimes being authentic feels messy, because we're human beings, and nothing really in our thinking just naturally is super clean. We have to work to get it clear. We have to work to get confidence. We have to work to get to a place where we communicate clearly. And communication comes easier for some than others, but still, at the end of the day, I listened to two fantastic messages at church today. Absolutely fantastic messages, Pastor Rusty and Pastor Paul. And what I know is when they started working on those messages, what they communicated today, they had to work to get there. They had to work to get the clarity. They had to work to get the communication. They had to work to get the content. And it was messy, but because they worked through it, the way they delivered it, I benefited from it. So 3 days in, I'm experiencing messiness. I'm experiencing I'm not even experiencing that I want to quit. I wanted to quit at this point before, when I started writing books, but not now. I'm loving the process. I'm loving the messiness. I'm loving creating something that I don't know exactly what it's going to look like at the end, because I'm embracing the idea of this being one of the most authentic pieces of me. It's a book. Right now, the working title is Be a Voice, Not an Echo. And it's really begins with my story of how I didn't want to be a voice. I just wanted to echo what everybody else was doing. I wanted to be an echo chamber of just everybody else. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be average. At the same time, not being average, but I wanted to fit in. I wanted to belong. I wanted to be part of the group. And yet I wanted to be a leader, and I couldn't figure out why there was so much tension. And now I realize, in order to lead effectively, I have to be a voice. In order to make a difference, I have to be a voice. In order to live in such a way that I hear, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant," when I get to heaven, I have to be a voice. Being a voice is my calling. I am compelled to be a voice and not just echo what the world, what the culture, or what the church around me is doing. And so be a voice, not an echo. And just for fun, I don't know if this will stick or not, but just for fun, the subtitle is The Story of an International Introvert. Because part of my story is the fact that I was an introvert and traveling back and forth between Africa, America, Ireland, back and forth, really played into my story about wanting to be an echo and wanting to fit in, because I was traveling around so much, I didn't have a lot of deep connection. I had deep connection with my family, but when it came to friends, when it came to peer groups, I didn't really have deep connections. And so the story of me wanting to be an echo and fit in was because I was an international introvert. And what I recognize now is the gift of growing up and being an international child. The gift of that is that I relish and I cherish community, and I thrive in relationship, one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on small group relationship. I thrive on those things because I was an international introvert and didn't have a lot of deep connection in my peer groups growing up. So this book is, it's a messy process, and I'm choosing to fall in love with the process And while I got to the point where I've quit before, I'm not quitting. In fact, I'm even more energized to keep going. So that's what I'm learning. The messier it is, the more authentic, more vulnerable it is, the more worth it's creating. If it's not messy, it's not worth creating. You're selling yourself short if what you're creating is not messy. So those are my thoughts today, 3 days into writing my book. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.